On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1978. We're going to be taking a look at the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and they're going to be performing New Walking Blues. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So this is following on from the video that I did a few days ago on Paul and the band, and we're going to include the history and his career that I didn't have a chance to include in that previous video. We'll also get into this performance and analyze it as normal. Let's get the guys up on screen and see how they get on.
Woke up this morning, people, I looked around for my shoes. You know I had those mean walking blues. Woke up this morning, looked around for my shoes. You know I had those mean old walking blues. Some people tell me now, worry blues ain't bad. It's the worst child I ever had. Some people tell me, well, blues ain't bad. It's the worst old feeling, child I ever had. Brooks run to the ocean and the ocean runs to the sea. If I don't find my baby, it's gonna bury me. Brooks run to the ocean and the ocean runs to the sea. Yeah. If I don't find my baby, child, they're gonna bury me.
I'm just going to jump in here. As always, the link to this video is going to be in the description below, so you guys can check it out there without me interrupting it. Something that I didn't mention in that first video that I did on Paul was his control of air, his breath support for playing the harp, and having a solo section that will be demanding inhaling and exhaling for a long duration. It isn't just like breathing normally, and then when you finish that, you can go back to singing. You can hear how Paul, when he gets back into his singing, he's managing his breath in order to be able to still sing the vocal phrases, but then get into the harp as well. It is chopping and changing between those two. It is something that will fly under the radar, being able to play the instrument and then come back with the vocal, because a lot of people would be out of breath playing the harp and then coming back to sing. You need to have your air already there and ready to be supported to hit these notes that we've got going on. We're talking about G4s here, A4s, A sharp 4s. They are high notes in that chest register. So it means that he needs to have the air there. He needs to be controlling it. And it's even more impressive considering the instrument that he's playing in between vocal phrases. So jumping into the guitar, we're in G here. So you want to be on the 3rd fret of your guitars in your bar chord position. And a quick shout out here to Buzz Feiten on lead guitar, laying down some tasty lines. Groove-wise, we're really straightforward because the whole band are emphasizing every single beat of each bar. So it means we get this sound, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll also find that we get this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. So it's a little jump down to the F. So up to speed we'll be going 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. You start to get the idea. Also, entertainingly enough, have this fill that I mentioned yesterday, and I said that it's a fill that's used all the time. I didn't expect it to turn up the next night in the analysis videos, but we have this little hammer on with that 2nd finger. Again, relate this to your chord position of G. And you can just throw it in there. I think Buzz is actually throwing it in now and again, sometimes on the 4th beat of the bar. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where he places it in there, as well as the little bend that happens again. If you're relating this to your chord shape, you'll be able to just get used to where that bend is in your minor pentatonic shape 1. The other thing that happens is the change over to the C. So we've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. As you can see, same principle there as we had on the G, down to the F and sliding up. Now the C, going down to the B flat and sliding up 2 frets. The only other change that we have is sounds like we do go up to a D minor 7th. And then back down to the C, and back to the G. And that is going to be the progression for the whole song. And we've got all of the lead work going on here, blues scale, minor pentatonic scale. So just staying in your shapes, you'll be absolutely fine here. And you would have noticed how Buzz, when he starts his lead, he is actually in the extended pentatonic shape here. So, and it actually starts with, all that kind of stuff. Really cool playing, vibrato as well that Buzz just has down to a T. Such expression in there. Another thing, just to throw it back to yesterday's video about playing with the chords and playing over the chords as they change. That's exactly what Paul does here. When we go to that D minor 7th, he's playing through that minor pentatonic shape 1 of D minor. So he is playing over that chord when he's there, and as we then go down to the C7th, he's then playing the notes from that chord back down to the G at the bottom. So he's just piecing it together in that way as well. The other thing that Buzz has got here is a great tone. It is that fine balance between clarity and having just enough distortion on there to allow him that sustain where he wants it. And he certainly gets that. It's such a smooth, silky sound. He gets to his lead with his technique, but also such a great tone. We are going to jump back into the performance. At the end of the video, we will get into Paul's history and his career. And there we have it. Just from a technical perspective, I want to focus a little bit on Buzz's playing there, the way that he is just playing minor notes most of the time, so it's got that edge to it, that attitude, and the way that Buzz delivers it with his control and the stylizations that he applies on the fretboard, the hammer-ons, the pull-offs, the bends, the vibrato, it is all in there. But because he's staying to that minor pentatonic and blues sound, it's going to have more attitude in there. You will find a lot of blues players who do tweak it towards that major key a lot of the time. So it's that balance between being happy and sad in the middle there, whereas this is really leaning towards that sadness and attitude, which I personally love the sound of. When we resume the video, we're straight into Paul's harp solo, and he's doing exactly the same thing. He'll be playing the same notes that Buzz has been playing on the guitar, but obviously putting his own expression into it, leaning towards that minor scale, the minor pentatonic, the blues scale as well, just gives it that edge. But getting into Paul's history, he first studied classical flute at a young age before he moved on to harmonica. He was also a promising athlete, but unfortunately sustained a knee injury, and this was at the same time that he was becoming more interested in blues music, so he decided to go in that direction. He also met the guitarist and singer-songwriter Nick Gravenites, and they hit it off because of their shared interest in authentic blues music. In the late 1950s, they started visiting blues clubs in Chicago, watching the likes of Little Walter, Otis Rush, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, and these guys were really encouraging to Nick and Paul, and even let them up on stage to jam occasionally. And Nick and Paul did perform themselves in college area coffee houses. And at this time, Paul played guitar, and he hadn't focused on his harp yet, but he did then start to really focus on that when he was about 18 to 19 years of age, which would have been 1960 to 1961, because that's when Elvin Bishop got involved and started to notice how much Paul was progressing on that harp. So teaming up with Elvin Bishop, they started playing regular gigs at a folk club and started a full band in 1963, and this would have been when Paul was 21 years of age. They started to get some attention, and the attention of Paul A. Rothchild, who was a record producer at the time. Now, they did sometimes also play at the same club that Mike Bloomfield played at, and it was Paul A. Rothchild who convinced Paul to allow Mike into the band. So Mike joined up, and it was just after that that they signed with Elektra Records. So they tried recording their debut album in the studio, but Rothchild wasn't impressed with the sound. He thought they needed to do a live album, so they went out and recorded live, but he still wasn't impressed enough with that, so they got into the studio again for the third attempt at getting this debut album down, and Elvin Bishop was on rhythm guitar there, Mike Bloomfield played all the lead, and they finally did get it done. But before it was released, they performed at Newport Folk Festival in 1965, and this is where they were seen by Bob Dylan, and Bob invited the guys to be his backing band for his first ever fully electric live performance. Unfortunately, that performance didn't go down very well, and it is something that I've mentioned on this channel in previous videos because it was controversial and did get a lot of media coverage, but it also worked in the band's favour because they got a lot of exposure from that event. So when they released the album in 1965, which was just called the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, that had a little bit of traction now because of the exposure they gained from that previous performance. Due to this increase in popularity, Paul appeared on the CBS game show To Tell the Truth, and he also performed with the house band on that show, and that was Born in Chicago that he played. Also in 1966 is when East West was released, and the title track of that album was a 13-minute song. So it was one of those that a lot of people have referred to as the start of acid rock and really going in a different direction and a different sound. In that same year, 1966, Paul recorded several songs with John Mayall Mail and the Blues Breakers, as well as in 1967 releasing the album The Resurrection of Pig Boy Crabshaw. And there was a lineup change for that album. Even though they had been successful before that, they changed it round and the album got to number 52 in the charts, which was their highest charting album. In 1968, the band released In My Own Dream, and that got to number 79 in the charts. In 1969, they performed at Woodstock, but unfortunately didn't make it into the final edit of the Woodstock film. That same year, they released Keep On Moving, and by this time, Paul was the only remaining original member, and in 1971, Sometimes I Feel Like Smiling was released, and the band disbanded shortly after that. So he continued and set up Paul Butterfield's Better Days, and between 1972 and 1973 released the self-titled album as well as It All Comes Back. He was pursuing a solo career at this time, as well as in 1975 teaming up with Muddy Waters to record the Muddy Waters Woodstock album. Paul continued to tour and record. He released in 1976 Put It In Your Ear, and in 1981 was North South, and in 1986 was his final studio album, which was the legendary Paul Butterfield Rides Again. Sadly, the next year in 1987, Paul died, aged 44, due to an accidental drug overdose, and it was found that he had heroin, codeine, and a tranquilizer called Librium in his system, as well as a trace of alcohol in there. He did suffer from peritonitis, which is a painful inflammation of the intestines, and it has been said that maybe he used heroin and got addicted to heroin in order to ease his symptoms of that condition. Also, Paul was struggling financially. In order to keep up with that financial strain of his drug habit, it meant that it was bankrupting him. Also, he was heavily affected by the death of Mike Bloomfield and manager Albert Grossman. In 2006, posthumously, he was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted the Paul Butterfield Blues Band in 2015. It's great to have a look back at Paul in full flow here. Another one of those that was taken very early on and at such a young age, at only 44, but such a multi-talented individual, not only on that harp, but that vocal ability as well. Thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!